on him.
The honourable member for Caribou Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this Prime Minister and this Liberal government, our country is broken. Canadians are struggling more than they have been in decades. Our communities, our provinces, our cities look like war zones. We have a Prime Minister who has lost his way. Today we have more Canadians that are facing homelessness, more Canadians that can't afford to feed their children, more Canadians accessing food banks than ever before. And what does this Prime Minister do? He takes to the U.S. airwaves to deliver his message. Why? Because he's afraid to stand before Canadians and answer the tough questions. Once again, he runs and takes to the U.S. airwaves that pander to him. And he answers lob questions, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we're all here to deliver for our constituents. There are 338 members of Parliament that have been elected to be the voices of Canadians. This House is a House of Commons, the common people. The carpet is green for the common people. We said this before early on in this Prime Minister's tenure that perhaps if the carpet was red, or if there was a red carpet going up to his seat, maybe he would appear here more often than he has. Maybe he would take it more serious. Mr. Speaker, what I'm hearing on the doorsteps, and not just in my riding of Caribou Prince George, but all across this country, is that Canadians have lost confidence in this government and in this Prime Minister. This Liberal government has given up on Canadians, has failed Canadians. I received a call from Tina, a constituent of mine from Horsefly, BC, just yesterday. She is a disabled Indigenous childhood trauma survivor who said this, and I quote, "When the Liberals stand in the House of Commons and claim that they are helping the most vulnerable Canadians, they are lying. I'm being impoverished by the NDP and the Liberals."
The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Well, we don't even know if this person he's quoting exists, but he's using that voice in order to use unparliamentary language, and it is unacceptable. So he needs to withdraw and apologize.
I would suggest that all of us had to be. I would suggest that all of us had to be cognizant of the words that we're using, even when we are quoting from it, to try to stay away from unparliamentary words as much as possible. So maybe I get the honourable member to rephrase that word and continue. I understand it's a quote from it, but we can't use derogatory names. We can't use words that are unparliamentary or seen unparliamentary in this chamber. So the honourable member for Caribou Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, Tina went on to say, "I am being impoverished by the NDP and Liberals. I can call an order made as a disabled person before I am deemed worthy of being able to afford to live." I rise today in this chamber, Mr. Speaker, to declare what millions of Canadians already know to be true. This Liberal government, led by this Prime Minister, has failed our country. He has failed the Canadian people. He has failed to uphold the trust that was placed upon him, not once, not twice, but 3 times. After 9 long years of broken promises, skyrocketing costs, crumbling institutions, and countless scandals, it's now crystal clear that this Liberal government no longer commands the confidence of the Canadian people, nor should it command the confidence of this House. Let's be clear. Our country is broken. This isn't just the rhetoric of the opposition. It is a fact evident in the daily lives of Canadians from coast to coast to coast. 9 years ago, the Prime Minister promised us sunny ways. He promised to uplift the middle class, make life more affordable, and restore confidence in government. But after almost a decade, what do we have to show for it? We see a country where everything is more expensive, a country where families struggle to afford the most basic necessities, a country where crime is surging, where overdoses are claiming thousands of lives, where mental health is at its worst level ever, where hope for the future is dwindling, and, Mr. Speaker, where overdose is the leading cause of death for youth aged 12 to 18 in my province of British Columbia. That is the record of this Prime Minister. And for this, we have a Prime Minister and a Liberal government to blame. Let's begin by talking about the cost of living, which has spiraled out of control under this government's watch. Under this Prime Minister's leadership, the dream of home ownership has slipped away from millions of young Canadians. In 2015, the average price of a home in Canada was just under $440,000. Today, that price has ballooned to over $750,000, a staggering 66% increase. In cities like Vancouver and Toronto, these numbers are even more horrifying. How are young families supposed to save for a down payment when prices soar at this rate? Consequently, a staggering 2/3 of young Canadians believe they'll never be able to afford a home. Rent has doubled. The needed down payment doubled. Home prices doubled. Not only that, but homeless encampments are springing up all across our country by the hundreds. 1,800 homeless encampments in this province alone. In my province, rest areas along the highway are becoming encampments with RVs and trailers because people cannot afford to buy a home, cannot afford to pay rent. Mr. Speaker, that is the stark reality. That is the record under this Prime Minister. It's not just housing. Let's talk about groceries. Food prices have increased by almost 10% over the past year alone. 20% of Canadians, 2 million Canadians, accessed the food bank just last month. 2 million Canadians. That is staggering. The average family of four now spends over $15,000 per year just to put food on the table. And what has this Liberal government done? They've dismissed these hardships with platitudes while ordinary Canadians are forced to make impossible decisions between feeding their families and paying their bills. They said Canadians have never had it so good. This Prime Minister has printed money like it's his job, recklessly adding more to the national debt than any other Prime Minister in the history of our country combined. The cost of gas, which is shot through the roof with prices reaching over $2 per litre in some provinces this year alone. Families are paying more at the pumps. Truckers are paying more to deliver goods. We know that if you tax the farmer that produces the food, tax the trucker that ships the food, it's Canadians that pay the price for that food. What's the Liberal response to this? They'll raise the taxes. They'll move to quadruple their carbon tax to 61 cents per litre, punishing hardworking Canadians even further. Mr. Speaker, our communities look like war zones. I ask Canadians who are watching this in the gallery today and at home, take a look at your neighborhoods, take a look at your communities. Do they look the way they did 9 years ago? No, they don't. Crime is up, Mr. Speaker. Overdoses are up. The failures of this government go far beyond economics. Under this Prime Minister and his Liberal governments, our communities have become less safe. Crime is on the rise in every part of this country. Violent crime has increased by 50% since this Prime Minister took office in 2015. Violent gun crime is up by 116%. Murders are up 28%. Gang-related murders are up 78%. Sexual assaults are up 75%. Auto theft, 46%. And extortion is up a whopping 357%. The streets of our cities, once safe and welcoming, now bear the scars of neglect with spikes in gang violence, drug-related crimes, and random assaults. The Prime Minister's solution to this is a hug-a-thug, catch-and-release, soft-on-crime, revolving door justice system that benefits the criminals at the expense of Canadian safety. Mr. Speaker, now on to a topic that's near and dear to me. Since 2016, over 47,000 Canadians have lost their lives to overdose. This government has spent over $1 billion on failed drug policies. Mr. Speaker, when I think about this, I think about Mr. Charles and Mrs. McDonald, whose daughter Brianna, aged 13, just 13, died in a homeless encampment due to overdose just last month. I think about my own brother who's on the street, gripped in this crisis. We can perpetuate somebody's addiction, but we can't get them into treatment, Mr. Speaker. That is the failed record of this Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I've spent 9 minutes speaking about their failed record. I haven't even touched on the scandals and the corruption that this Prime Minister has brought to this House. We are the laughingstock on the international stage. This Prime Minister wants to be known more for his socks than the work that he does here at home. This Prime Minister kicked to the curb our first Indigenous female Attorney General, because she would not back, and she spoke truth to power, she would not back his corrupt ways, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will leave you with this. We can do better. The time for change is now. We can no longer allow this government to stumble from scandal to scandal, leaving Canadians to pick up the pieces. Mr. Speaker, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up for this Prime Minister. Thank you.